to see you all. It's nice to see you, Merle.
Good to see you too.
It's been so long. I feel like I haven't done this like for a month or something, or at least. So it's great to be back with you all. Let's see any more. There's some more people coming on. It says 12, 13. So, Brad is coming. Okay. And how's your summer going, everybody?
It's hot.
It's really
hot.
I only have air conditioning in one room, so
oh no.
I live in
we keep our house freezing.
So I like freezing.
We don't know what it's like outside unless we go out there.
Right. Well.
So, and this weekend we'll be in the car all weekend, running kids everywhere. So we'll have freezing in the car.
Well, we're supposed to turn our air off at 4.
Why?
The flex alerts between 4 and 9.
Total to at least turn it up to 78.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I only have one room, so I'm leaving it on.
Do you have fans?
I have fans, but
oh, okay. That it's better than nothing.
No. It's just this is 100-year-old duplex, and the windows are like French doors. You know they.
Oh, right.
So, and it doesn't have central air. It's so old, but it's all right. Anyway. Hi, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
A really great Parsha, actually, this week. And again, I just love the book. We're in the book of Deuteronomy, which is the last book, before we start over. And this book is so different, I think, than the other books. And, I've been reading a lot about the origins of the book. And there was one theory that I subscribed to until I read more recently that, the whole thing was discovered in the temple in around 630 BCE during the reign of King Josiah. And one of the scholarly ideas is that it was written at that time, though the prophets, Josiah was doing like a cleanup of the temple. And they say, oh my God, we found this new book by Moses, the 5th book. Before then, Deuteronomy was not, no one had it. And so the thinking was that perhaps the prophet Jeremiah wrote it. It was written, at the time. But now there's thinking that fragments were added, but that some of it was quite ancient and either lost or hidden or put away because, and we'll look at one of them, the attitude toward kings is not contemporary of the power of the kings at the time. The attitude is quite limiting to the power of the kings. That's one thing. And another idea is there's really no legal, this is all about law and how to, the courts, there's no reference to big cities really, or urban centers or anything. It's still sort of portrayed as a more agricultural society. And so those parts now biblical scholars say were written earlier, and then other parts were added until and they think that either was one Deuteronomist, they call the writer the Deuteronomist, or a school of Deuteronomists who sort of refined this 5th book of the Torah. But it's quite an amazing book because it's the book, not only does it review things like the 10 Commandments, but it also has the Shema and the V'ahavta in it, which is, and there's more mention of women in it. And we're going to look at that in a second. I mean, even in punishing women, but there's a mention of women that I really haven't noticed in the previous books. And the part we're not reading today, but they talk about slaves and how you're supposed to treat your slaves, your Jewish slaves, and they mention the woman slave too. So there's sort of a more consciousness that women exist in our society and they have to be paid attention to. So let's start with a bracha because it's so nice to study with you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So it's God, blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. So we're engaging in the words of Torah. Okay, so of course I'm going to share my screen. if you have Chumash, which is what you call the first 5 books of the Torah, Chumash, it's Parshat Shoftim, which is Deuteronomy 16, verse 18 is where it starts. So, and it's about justice, and there's the most famous quote of justice right in the very first paragraph that we're going to talk about. So let me just, where do I share screen? Share screen. And all these things. Where's my, this is none of them are, this is weird. Let me, hold on, let me just look. Yeah, here it is. All right, how do I not share that? It's open. Let me try this again. Hannah, are you on? By any chance?
Yes.
I'm looking for, show all windows. Let's see. Parshat Shoftim, here it is. This is an old one. Okay.
You want me to pull it up from?
No, I have it. Here it is. Here it is.
Okay.
It's not the one that I prepared for the last hour. Anyway, it's okay. So, sorry, I had like a virus for the last 2 weeks and I just have a little bit of a residual cough. So let's just read the first 3 verses and talk about this. So it starts here. Shoftim means judges. Shoftim. So who would like to read 18, 19, and 20? Somebody.
Here, I can.
Okay, thanks, Merle.
You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself and all your cities that the Lord your God is giving you for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice, you shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Justice shall you pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you.
Okay, so first of all, it's interesting that, so this, as we know, is Moses talking to the Israelites before they go into the land. That's sort of the setup of the context. And he's talking about you're going to go in now, and he's saying you need judges. And again, we saw in the book of, in Kedoshim, in Leviticus, this idea that you don't favor the poor or the rich. You don't feel sorry for people because they have bad circumstances. Your judgment must be just, must be based on the law. So, but okay. And then it says this I think it's on the Liberty Bell, isn't it? Justice you shall pursue. So why twice? Why do you think that it's not just justice you should pursue or pursue justice, justice, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. And it doesn't say establish. I'm going to call on you in a minute. Just want to set up the questions. It doesn't say establish. It doesn't say, create, or it says pursue. So there's a lot of nuance to this statement. Okay, Cindy.
Okay, from Stan's Torah study, he said that the first time it's the justice of the courts and the second time is the justice of the judges themselves.
What's the difference between the courts and the judges?
The courts is the judge's decisions following the law, and the second is the judge's behavior outside of the court.
So you mean but it's both the judge. It's the judge in court. There's no jury. There's no jury here. It's
Right.
a judge, or actually 3 judges. If I looked at Rashi's commentary, he talks about 3 judges for most cases, most legal cases. So you're saying one is for the judges, and
Well,
one.
it's his behavior in the court and his behavior outside of the court.
So the judge. Okay. Does anybody, what do you other people think about this? Penina.
Oh.
And then Miriam.
I think I have to leave. I think my husband's calling me. Can I say one quick thing?
Okay.
I think Justice South Up the Sioux was on a Liberty Bell, but I also think perhaps I'm wrong, and proclaim liberty throughout the land. Perhaps that's on the liberty.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm completely wrong. Okay, but nothing about the twice. Okay, I made a mistake. You're right. Okay, Penina.
It was already corrected. וקראתם דרור בארץ לכל יושביה, and thou declared freedom is under liberty bell. Justice, I think it's under a Supreme Court.
Actually, it was on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's wall.
Yes.
It was on her wall. But
yes.
Why justice? Any other ideas? Brad?
Well, I wasn't going to comment on justice, but
okay.
on the idea of pursue.
Oh, good.
Which tells me, and I've interpreted that as seek, you shall seek justice, with the idea that true justice, in a sense, is always beyond our reach, that it's something we need to aspire to, that it is forever a goal, and a goal that we need to work towards.
So you don't think there's justice in the court?
Well, I think the emphasis here is on the verb. You shall seek, you shall pursue it, that it is not a given, it is something that needs, that it's a perpetual striving, it's a perpetual effort.
Yes. The word terdof comes, really also can mean chase, like chasing, like it's the same verb they used for the Egyptians chasing the Israelites after they left the land, and when they went into the land. So it's a very vigorous chasing after, which implies, as you said, it's not easy to find, but it seems to imply you have to go out of your way. I don't care how, you have to run after it and get it. You have to reach it. You can't just chase it. You have to achieve justice. So that's another interpretation of justice. Always in the Torah, when you say a word twice, it's like emphasized very, very strongly. So again, that reinforces what you said, Brad, that it's like you have to pursue it. Any other ideas what else it could mean as twice? Benjamin.
Thank you.
Susan.
Well, as I think of our modern justice system, we have courts and then appellate courts and then Supreme Courts. So sort of that idea that justice isn't a binary black and white, that there has to be reviews of justice. And sometimes there are mistakes are made or new information, so that we have to think of it not as a river, but as this evolving thing. And I think somebody was saying, Brad, hey, you're seeking it, but it's a seek, not so much as a destination.
Well, you're supposed to achieve it though, even if it's really, really hard. Like you can't say, well, I tried, but it wasn't just.
But achieving it is through the process.
Yeah.
If we're watching a show right now called The Stairway or something, and this person is appealing and different things without getting the show, but justice, may take time.
Yeah, I watched it. Very interesting. Susan Ehrlich, hi, nice to see you. And then Rebecca. Okay. You're still muted. You're muted, Susan, you're muted.
Yes, and then also it might be how you go about pursuing justice. You should be just, sometimes the means are not just for a just end, but that should be looked into. It could also be justice in a more global sense in society, not just a one-on-one. And then I also think it also relates to what was said just before it. You should not treat the poor differently from the wealthy. And there's a tailgate on that, because you should be just and in the means as well.
So, okay, I have a question, but I'm going to have Rebecca. Where is Rebecca? Okay, hi.
Hi. So in the Bible that I have, the translation says, after justice, justice, it says, so that you may live in the land and inherit. So I think inheritance is very important, and that you just can't take it for granted, and that's where the justice comes in, that this is an inherited thing that God gave the people, and that you have to tread lightly and treat it well with justice and respect. That's my interpretation.
Okay, I like that too. Who else had their hand up? Merle. You're muted.
Okay, so I keep thinking that if you look at the courts first, that if you've done wrong, the court is supposed to teach you the right way to be. And that might involve punishment. You might get off, whatever the situation is. And then I'm thinking about pursuit, that you need to take what you've learned from the court, assuming you've learned something, and then you need to pursue the right way to do it, because somebody can't always do it for you.
What do you mean?
Well, that you have to look at it like, okay, the judge taught me what I need to do. Now I need to go on and do it to make myself right and to make myself just.
So the justice is for the complainant or the person facing the court as well as the judge, is what you're saying.
Right.
2 levels. So I want to ask you a question based on this, do not favor the poor, do not, elevate the rich, be completely fair. What do you think this means for affirmative action? How do you think that this would apply to affirmative action? I'm curious what you would think. Do you think it meets the criteria of justice, justice you shall pursue?
It can, if you choose to pursue it.
Okay, Ben?
Well, if you take the argument that affirmative action is, in lack of a better term, a make good for years of discrimination and holding people back. So to create justice, you enhance opportunities. To me, this would follow that.
Okay, so, Gary, yeah.
I'm unmuted.
No, you're fine.
Okay, looking at what Ibn Ezra says, the justice. The first is if it appears good to you, and the second justice means if it does not appear good to you. And I think this comes up in affirmative action reparations, where I didn't do anything. Why should I give this land back? So I think could be an interpretation.
So it would be against affirmative action, you're saying, in this case?
Oh, it would be for.
Oh, before.
Before affirmative, because it might not seem good to you, and it may not benefit you, but in the grand scheme of pursuing justice, this is something you should pursue.
Okay, before people comment, I'm going to call on you in a minute. Does it change anything when you realize that the word that they're calling justice in here is tzedek, tirdof, and tzedek really literally means righteousness, not justice. It's the same word, and it's tzaddik is a person who's righteous. Tzedakah, that we give charity, is from the same root, tzadok, which means righteous. So if it's righteousness you shall pursue, courts and others, how does that affect your understanding of the line? Brad?
Well, I've actually been thinking about this. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle talks about righteousness and virtue. And he says the way you reach those is very simply by just practicing them. You practice virtue. That's how you get there. And I wonder if that same logic is not implied here, that the way to reach righteousness, the way to reach virtue, the way to reach justice is to simply practice it.
Okay, I like that. Is there a difference between justice and righteousness? Is there a difference? And I know Natalie wanted to speak. Natalie. And then Penina. Yeah.
Yes, well, you can also interpret this that justice is what the law says is correct. But then the justice in the world, when the world has changed, when people have changed, you're going to be in a new environment. Everything is going to be different from what you knew before. That may be a different kind of justice, that you may have to bend the justice of the law, which certainly applies in our modern society today, that people are so different. We've advanced to such a different stage that some of the laws have to be bent a tiny bit in order to accommodate the new we live in terms of what we think is justice.
Right. So what you're saying is laws of 100 years ago that they consider just are no longer just and could be
They have to be bent
unjust.
a little. For example, if you want to apply today, families would not accept that a man and a woman would live together unless they were married. That was a law in Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism. Well, today that's bent a lot because of the modern society that we live in, and you have to accept that the justice is okay. Two people love one another. They don't have to be married to live together, correct?
They don't accept it though. They don't accept
They
it.
may not accept, well.
That's the great thing about Judaism in a way.
Get out of the Orthodox.
Exactly. Okay, Penina.
Okay,
No, you just muted yourself now.
sorry, okay.
Yeah.
All right. The change of the structure of the society, there was a change from autocracy to monarchy. You said yourself that you think that the book was written already when there was a king there. And when people asked for a king, Samuel told them, you don't know what you're asking for. You don't know what's good for you. And they still wanted a king because they were disappointed with Samson. So the thing is that taking the authority from the priest and all this thing, and whoever represents the connection with God, now changed to a monarchy, and they thought that the king is going to solve all the problems. But the prophets came to show that the king themselves sometimes did not pursue justice. So, and there was a need to tell them and to preach to the whole society there, to the new structure, that you should pursue justice no matter who is in charge.
Okay.
It's not Jethro anymore. It's not Moses anymore. It's the king now there. So
except I want to show you what it says.
As much as the other people.
Right. I want to show you now what it says about a king. Because if you're going to have a king, it's, I didn't even remember this part, so I think you'll find it interesting. Hold on, but where? Yeah. All right.
Samuel told them, you don't know what you're asking for, don't do it. And they ended it anyway.
That's not in the Torah, though. I want to show you the part in the Torah. I'm going to move down. Hold on.
Right.
Why is this doing this? Oh, okay. You know, I give up. Come on, is this going to move? All right. All right. I'm going to read it to you. Forget it. I'm going to read it to you because my thing is just not working. I don't know why this computer, and I just had it fixed. Stop share. Okay. I want to read you what it says about the king because I think this is really interesting. And then I'll go back to something else. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Military matters, the 3 cities, prisoners, warfare. Sorry. Endowments of the clergy. The king. Okay. If after you have entered the land. Now don't forget this was written well, they don't know. Was this written before there was a king in the time of Judges? Because at the moment, when they found this book, there had been kings for several hundred years. If after you have entered the land that the Lord your God has assigned you and take possession of it and settle in it, and you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me, you shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by the Lord your God. Okay, so there's a lot in that already. If you want to be like everyone else, but he has to be chosen by God, be sure to set as king over yourself one of your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you, one who is not your kinsman. Moreover, he shall not keep many horses or send people back to Egypt to add to his horses, since the Lord has warned you, you must not go back that way again. And he shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray, nor shall he amass silver and gold to excess. And here's the final part. Penina, I don't think you realize this part. When he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of the Torah written for him on a scroll by the priests, and let it remain with him, and let him read it all his life,
Right?
that he may learn to revere the Lord his God, to observe faithfully every word of this Torah, as well as all these laws. Thus he will not act haughty toward his fellows or deviate from the Torah to the right or the left, to the end that he and his descendants may reign long in the midst of Israel. Okay, so what are all of the qualifications or limitations here for a king? What are they? Susan?
Well, the main thing is that he should have the Torah and read it himself, like every day and for all of his life, or at least all of his reign. So he's subject to the same requirements that other people are. He's not, the high and mighty. Another thing is to be of his own people. So you don't bring in foreigners with other potential gods, which is the main issue, or other well, I was going to say wives, which Solomon did. So that was a no-no. Not to get horses from Egypt. I'm not sure why that was a requirement, but Solomon did it anyway. So, but the main thing is the Torah, and he's not to be, the king is not to set himself above other people.
So are any kings like that? Were there ever any kings even in Israel like that?
Absolutely.
Now, who followed this?
Who followed it?
Who followed this? Since did any of the kings follow these laws?
Well, Solomon didn't.
Who?
Solomon had foreign wives.
He did not. I said, did any actually follow it?
None, Susan, none.
None followed it, which is interesting that it was discovered at this time when, the king and the court was very elaborate. So that's why they think this part might have been written beforehand. But also, what's not written here, when the way the kings got around it is, they were Israelites, but they married all these foreign wives who brought all of these foreign practices into the temple and into Israel. So that even though, in fact, when you look at Kings, 2 Kings, where the story of the discovery of this book is, they talk about how after King Josiah, hi Abby, nice to see you. After King Josiah read this book, I've mentioned this before, but it just blew my mind when I read it in the Tanakh. They kicked out the prostitutes, male and female, from the temple. They stopped, all of the pagan worship. There even is a suggestion there was human sacrifice going on to Moloch going on at this time. I mean, it was like they were completely pagan in the culture. And then this book appeared, and because there's a huge threat, which was a couple last week, of all the curses that are going to come down on everybody if they don't clean up their act, it did finally. But this idea, imagine our society if the president had to read the Constitution every day?
Well, that actually,
Sorry.
people suggest that our leaders carry a copy of it with them and read it often, because we often forget the values and the instructions and the laws of our Constitution.
Yes, I agree. I mean, so here the Torah, this is like written, almost 3,000 years ago. This could have been written 1,000 or 900 BCE. This section is already saying we're all corruptible and you're not divine. You're not a divine king. You're chosen. Yes, it says, let it be by someone that God has chosen. So that's, but who literally chooses the king? Chose the first kings. They were the prophet. It was the prophet Samuel. He first chose Saul. Saul, he considered unworthy. Then he chose David. And then it became an inherited title that you were descended from David, which is probably extremely dangerous, because just because your father was king doesn't mean you're going to be a good king. That is why the Torah needs to be at your side. You need to be educated. Penina.
The kings used to be chosen from among the shepherds. And the
Yes,
prophet
you
is the
mentioned
one
that.
who saw that if they were really kind to the sheep, kind to their flocks and to their fellow shepherds, then he was to be the proper king to lead a nation.
You're
all
right.
of them were shepherds, and that's how they were chosen from.
And Moses was a shepherd, and Jacob was a shepherd. And the word for shepherd is ro'eh, which means to see or watch over.
With an ayin. No, with an ayin is to be a friend.
Oh, to be a friend. Oh, really?
Right. Ro'eh with an ayin comes from the word rea, a friend.
Ro'eh
to see is with an aleph.
So ro'etzon is,
it's like somebody who has who is a friend of the sheep, who is taking care of them. Somebody who is a caregiver. Somebody who is a friendship giver.
Okay, so that is the here in this book, that is the requirements for a king. So all of this is interesting how it's sort of jumping from topic to topic. Now, there's another section that is fascinating, and I want to ask you what you think about this, because I have a problem with it. Let me try again if I can share, because I really would love to share. I don't know why, oh, maybe, let me see. Yeah, it's open right behind me, but I can't show you it. Oh, all right. Anyway, let's see. Parshat Shoftim. Is there another Parshat Shoftim? All right, let me just, save. Hold on.
I think we have it.
Got it.
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't moving, but now it's moving. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you about this. Was interesting. Right after it says, justice, justice, you shall pursue, there's this thing about monuments and praying. You shall not plant for yourself an Asherah or any tree near the altar of the Lord your God, and you shall not set up a monument for yourself, the Lord your God. And then I want to look at this because it's and anyone who will go and worship other gods and prostrate himself before them, or to the sun, the moon, or any host of the heavens I have commanded, it will be told to you, and you will hear it and investigate thoroughly, and behold, the matter coincides. Okay, so here's the things you couldn't worship: a tree, a monument, any kind of a monument, any kind of a pole, or sun, moon, God, sun or the moon or the stars ever. But here's the part that's fascinating to me. Then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has committed this evil thing to your cities, the man or the woman, and you shall pelt them with stones and they shall die. Okay, but by the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall the one liable to death be put to death. He shall not be put to death by the mouth of 1 witness. So here, it's in order to put someone to death in Judaism, you need 2 eyewitnesses, at least, not one, 2 eyewitnesses who will swear to it. I don't even know, is that the standard in American law for punishment? You can have circumstantial evidence, right? You can have DNA, you can have this, you can have that, but here it's 2 eyewitnesses. And Rabbi Akiba in the Talmud said, and so they almost never put anyone to death, by the way. It was rare. And he actually said, if we put one person to death in 70 years, it's a bloody court. We're bloodthirsty if we do it once in 70 years. So there are all of these warnings. So do you think this would stop people from doing it if they could do it in secret or whatever? I mean, do you think that, is this liberal idea of what punishment is, it useful, or does it, how do you think it affects people who do want to worship other gods? Merle.
I'm just putting this in terms of within the last few years that, and I don't know what the law is everywhere, but in Arizona, if you have 2 or more witnesses who don't have the same accounting of what they saw, the person who did wrong gets off free.
And what do you think of that?
I think it sucks because as the victim in a horrible accident years ago, I couldn't get anything from the person that hit me. And fortunately, my husband's in the insurance business, so he was able to interpret the law and the insurance law to get something from the damages.
So damages are totally different in Judaism, than putting someone to death.
Right.
I mean, there's huge compensation for damages in Judaism as opposed to this. Brad?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's been proven that eyewitnesses are the least reliable proof of the commission of a crime. So the idea of having 2 of them, to me, seems like an excellent idea. And getting back to the trees, I know this is a bit of an aside, but that relates to the concept of animism, where people believed that spirits lived in trees. So that was part of the idolatry, is the animistic religions. I know that's a little bit of an aside, but I thought it was interesting finding it here in the Torah.
I don't think it's an aside because there's so many warnings against idolatry all over the place. You know that it was rampant, that it was really popular to worship fertility goddesses and gods, especially women. I think they throw women in here because I think there were lots of cults of, goddesses now, and all the spirits and all the, the sun, the planets, the stars, the sun, whatever, because it's really hard to worship and understand a completely invisible God. It's a really hard idea. And they struggled with it, for a really, really long time. I mean, Christianity actually reinstated a being because it was so hard. And they reinstated a woman, the mother of God, Mary. They took, Hera or Isis, and they turned her into the mother of God. You know what I mean? Because it's really a hard idea, this abstract idea of an invisible presence in the world. So the ancient Israelites, and especially when everybody else has them, you have statues, you have, temples, you have, look in Egypt, the amazing stone sculptures of these gods. And what do the Jews have? They have the temple, but in the Holy of Holies, in there's nothing. You know what I mean? It's so it's hard. And that's why I think there's so many proscriptions, as they say, against it, because people couldn't do it, or it took us a really, really, really long time. Pnina.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. when you open the ark in the temple, in any temple or synagogue, you have the Torah there. And the whole thing is that the guideline is teaching. So you learn from mistakes, you learn from lives, and also the condition around you. And you try to always better it and make it so people can live with each other in peace. That's why we have the temples with the Torah constantly reminding us. So I think the whole thing is a matter of learning. In Israel, they don't have the death penalty, period, end. If they needed to hang Eichmann, they had a problem finding somebody who wanted to do it. And even him, he put a sack over his head so nobody would know that he did it, who did it. It's you learn from your mistakes, and that's what the prophets were trying to tell them. They were teachers. They weren't visionaries. They couldn't see, they couldn't really tell the future, but it was warnings of what will happen if the behavior will be the kind that isn't proper to each other or proper to whatever.
Right,
So,
but in the ancient world, that was very unusual, very different from the rest, you know what I mean? And so it was, people struggled and strived and whatever. And but you know, so okay, let's continue. Share. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Share. All right. Okay, now. Okay, 8. So what if this is interesting because I didn't realize this. Okay, what if you can't decide? Who would like to read this? If a matter eludes you in judgment. Who would like to read? Okay, Stacy.
If a matter eludes you in judgment between blood and blood.
Oh, I see.
Is that between two relatives? What is the blood and blood?
No, between killing or not killing, if you can't decide.
Between judgment and judgment, or between legion and legion, words of dispute in your cities, then you shall rise and go up to the place the Lord your God chooses. And you shall come to the Levitic Kohanim, and to the judge who will be in those days, and you shall inquire, and they will tell you the words of judgment.
So you go to the priest, the Kohen. If even the judge, so here's like a Supreme Court, so to speak, or appellate court, or I don't know, or if there are 3 judges for a lot of civil things and they can't agree, they go to the Kohanim. Keep going.
And you shall do according to the word they tell you from the place the Lord will choose, and you shall observe to do according to all they instruct you. According to the law they instruct you, and according to the judgment they say to you, you shall do. You shall not divert from the word they tell you, either right or left. And the man who acts intentionally, not obeying the Kohen, who stands there to serve the Lord your God, or to judge that man shall die, and you shall abolish evil from Israel. And all the people shall listen and fear, and they shall no longer act wantonly. Yeah.
Okay, so you go to the priests, which is interesting, and it makes us understand why, you know, in during second temple time, late second temple time, before the destruction of the second temple, which was 70 CE or 70 AD, there was a huge conflict between the rabbis and the priests. Think about it. The rabbis studied Torah, they had commentaries, they had the Sanhedrin and all this, but the priests, according to this, had the last word. And the priests, that's not really their domain. I mean, their domain is sacrifices and keeping the temple going and the worship service and all that. And so this was, I would imagine, a huge conflict between these 2 factions for power, for judgment, for whatever. And, you know, when the temple was destroyed, the priests, you know, lost out. But it wasn't, I think there was a lot of conflict. Yes, Susan.
Are you talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees?
Yes, yeah, basically, yes. So, but the rabbis, you know, had already been studying Torah. They codified the Torah. Ezra read the whole Torah in 400 BCE. So now, you know, and the priests were still, according to this, the last word. And So does anybody know what the Urim and the Tumim were? Does anybody know what those were? Besides
They
Susan?
were divining objects. I think the priest had them in his pouch, and often they were used for war to decide what to do. They would. I mean, it was a divining instrument. I don't think anyone has thoroughly explained what these objects were like, but they would consult them nonetheless.
Yes, Brad, you were raising your head, now nodding your head. Oh, you don't know? Well, the priest wore this breastplate. By the way, I think I've mentioned this. All of the garb, or a lot of the garb of the high priest and the priests, are what we now decorate the Torah with.
Right.
The breastplate, their bells on the bottom of their gowns that they put on it, the crown. Some of them have a crown, like their headpiece and whatever. So they took, and even the beautiful cover was all like the robe of the priests and the decor. But there was this thing called Urim Tumim, and it was this breastplate with 12 gems, each for the 12 tribes of Israel. And apparently, and this is also, I can imagine the rabbis going, give me a break here. They would ask questions and they would like sparkle or in some way give the priest the answer. It's very mysterious, what it was. And it means light and purity. And it's weird. That is the motto of Yale University. Lux et Veritas, and it's from Urim Tumim. So I don't know. It's really interesting. Merle.
Okay, that's a little too mystical
Yeah.
for me to imagine. But my question is the conflict between the rabbis and the priests, because rabbis have been studying, they've learned to teach, they're following the law, or they're learning the law to follow. Is it because the priests feel like they're going to be put out of place? I don't think they felt like they were going to be put out of place. I think they felt they were superior because they were in the temple. Yeah.
They were running the temple, and the temple was, the Holy of Holies. The priest went in on Yom Kippur, and he was the own high priest. And, the ark was there with the 10 Commandments and the divine presence. There was this idea that it was God's dwelling. And they just thought, who are you? We run the show. And here in this text, it is giving, this is before rabbis, of course.
Well, yeah.
Many rabbis, but I'm sure they used it, to give them the power. There's one more thing I really want to talk about, and it's this idea that you can kill people, but not trees, which I want to discuss with you. It's in this Parsha, so hold on, because there's so much here, but this part. All right, let me get to it. All right, now let me go down. Okay. All right. Okay, because I didn't. All right, hold on. Oh, there's also this idea. Oh, there's two things, but I want to do the trees. No, oh my God, I didn't even get it on this one. No. All right. Well, let's do the cities of refuge. This is also really interesting. Hold on. Okay, let me make it bigger. So there's this idea. Imagine if we had this in the in anywhere in the world, of cities of refuge. This is a repetition. I think it's also in the book of Leviticus, but it's about these cities of refuge. Okay, Stacy, would you read?
Sure. Beginning on 1.
Yeah, when the Lord your God.
When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you inherit them and dwell in their cities and in their houses. You shall separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you to possess. Prepare the road for yourself and divide into 3 parts the boundary of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and it will be for every killer to flee thee.
So flee there. So it basically like 3 cities across the country. There's roads to each city. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. And this is the case of the killer who will flee there so that he may live. Whoever strikes his fellow to death unintentionally, whom he did not hate in times past, as when a man goes with his fellow into the forest to chop wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron flies off the handle, and it reaches his fellow, and he dies, he shall flee to one of these cities and live.
Okay, so we're talking about manslaughter, I guess, where if somebody kills somebody accidentally, why does he have to flee though? Why does he have to flee? Why can't he go to the court? Would you think? Why must he flee?
The family might seek revenge.
Exactly. And apparently, it's very interesting how they just throw it in there. There's a feud, the Avenger. And here, all right. So Cindy, why don't you read? Lest the Avenger. You're muted, Cindy.
Lest the avenger of the blood pursue the killer while his heart is hot and overtake him, because the way is long and he strikes him to death, whereas he was not observing of death, for he had not hated him in times past. Therefore, I command you, saying, you shall separate for yourself 3 cities. And when the Lord your God expands your boundary, as he swore to your forefathers, and he gives you all the land of which he spoke to give to your forefathers, you will keep all this commandment to perform it, which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God and to walk in his ways all the days. You shall add 3 more cities for yourself in addition to these 3.
So 6, he's saying, so that it won't be. But here I like, but if a man hates his fellow, 11, lies in wait for him, rises up against him and strikes him mortally, and he flees to one of these cities, the elders of his city shall send and take him from there and deliver him into the hand of the avenger of the blood, that he may die. So this is really ancient. It's interesting because, and you shall not pity him, but you shall abolish the shedding of the blood of the innocent from Israel, and it will be good for you. So in the first part, we're talking about judges. And in this part, we're talking about letting avengers kill somebody. So it's hard to reconcile, how they have both of them in the same parsha. And Susan, did you want to say something?
Yes. Where is this text? Where did you take this text from?
This is all from Shoftim, the same, it's Deuteronomy 16.
I know that. Where did you
19.
get that translation of the text?
Oh, okay. I took it from Chabad, actually, which is pretty good. Chabad, yeah, the Chabad text. So it's pretty close to the literal translation. But it again sort of implies that this is like an amalgam of different levels, because the beginning is set up courts, set up judges, justice you shall pursue, and you need 3. And then here it's like, well, if he lay in wait for somebody, and there's no suggestion of 2 witnesses, you can just chase him and kill him. On the other, Penina, did you want to say something?
You're muted.
The protection would be no more protection when the priest died or when the Kohen died, and then a new Kohen is in charge of that city. So the cities were kind of like following more the laws, like the religious laws, not the whatever you want to call. I don't know what you call the political laws or the
civil law.
The civil laws, right. So when the priest died, that's it. The protection was gone.
It wasn't protection. It's that, like the danger should be gone. That's if you were guilty of accidental death. You went and lived in that city and you stayed there until the high priest died. I mean, It's like, why? There's many discussions of what does that mean? Why when the high priest dies, then you can leave and go home. But I'm talking about the one who lays in wait, a vengeance, and we know it all the time. And you go and it's first degree murder. He waits, he lies in wait, he kills the guy. Suddenly there's no discussion of two witnesses or anything. It's just like the avenger can go and kill him. So it's, I mean, I have to look at the Talmud, actually. I would like to look at the Talmud and see what the Talmud says about this, because it's confusing, or the commentaries, that in the same Parsha, you have like justice, and then blood feud is
Can
allowed.
the Avenger go into the City of Refuge
No.
if you're already there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but the City of Refuge is only for accidental death.
Right.
But intentional, lying in wait, hating someone and killing them, there's no, even if you go into the city, you can go in there and take the person out and deliver him to the avenger. So I find that really, okay. Yes, Cindy.
I know that the rules are written because things were going on that they needed to address. So
Right.
each area needed to have 3 cities for involuntary manslaughter. It just seems like there was a lot of that going on if they needed 3 different cities of refuge for them.
6 all over the country. So you wouldn't have to run too far if the avenger was chasing you. It was more about you could get there in time. They were all over the country, so you could get there in time. However, it's really, I mean, obviously, I mean, I bet there's a whole huge section of Talmud about this that would be interesting to look at, because it's like, how do you know the person who comes into the city actually was only accidental? How do you know they're not lying? What if there are no witnesses? How do you, I mean, it's very complex. Brad.
There is
Well,
a lot to think to know the background. This whole thing is they were allowed to build a second temple, but they weren't allowed to have a king, because they had to report to Nebuchadnezzar or to whoever it was, the one who is in charge with the Assyrian at the time. He wanted every country that he defeated to have their own temple, and but as long as his God is the superior.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that.
All this stuff, but who was in charge of the temple or to have the authority was only the priest.
Okay,
So
but
there was-
Nina, this has nothing to do with the idea of murder.
What I'm trying to say, that's the confusion. It's not only on your part.
Oh, I see. Okay. Brad. Yeah.
well, do you think the Torah is taking a realistic, practical approach when it's a crime of passion, and recognizing that in a crime of passion, for example, that people are reacting so quickly and emotionally, as opposed to other types of crime where it would be more practical to go to a court and to have witnesses and go through that whole routine. So is the Torah kind of taking maybe a pragmatic approach to different types of crime, whether it be a crime of passion versus other types of crime?
Yes, maybe, but there's no, it just says if he lies in wait, if you lie in wait, it's not a crime of passion. You're lying in wait, you're planning, you're killing. The point is that this person who does this in this section of this parsha, you don't bring him to the court. You don't have to witnesses. You say you deliver him to the family of the person who was killed and let them kill him. It's pretty
right. But what triggered all of this was an initial murder, and then that person who is responding then is responding in the heat of the moment. And
no, it's not in the heat of the moment.
It's revenge.
The person is revenge.
Yeah.
The person, no, you kill somebody. You kill somebody you hate. You run away. You even go all the way to the City of Refuge. People, the police can come in, pull you out of the City of Refuge, and hand you over to the family for blood vengeance. It's not like the Avenger kill, even if there is the Avenger killing him on the spot. That is a crime of passion. But there's the implication that even if they run away, you can deliver them to the family. So I actually am going to look at some commentary on this, because I'm curious what the rabbi said. I'm sure it changed. I'm sure it rarely happened. I'm sure they said, no, we're not doing this anymore. But the Torah, that's what's so great about it. We really get a view of society as we evolved and human behavior and understanding of human behavior, and then saying, okay, no, that's exactly like who said, Rebecca, I think, when you said some laws no longer apply. They say that we can't do that anymore. Just like we don't do the sota. They stopped doing the sota, which is a whole ordeal. If a man suspected his wife of cheating, even if he had no proof, he could put her through this horrible ordeal just to make her drink this horrible thing to see if she got bloated and all this stuff. I mean, they just said no. So
abolished also in not in medieval times, it was abolished before them, the ritual of the sota.
Yeah.
But maybe they brought this up because I mean, I don't know, I'm just as curious as you are, so that would be easy to know. But I think it might be they haven't dealt with murder at all. So rather than us taking the easy path and saying, okay, well, there are these cities of refuge for the manslaughter, what happens with murder? And there I'm thinking, I mean, with intentional,
right,
permanent murder. So they're addressing it, but only partially so. And I guess maybe throwing up their hands saying, you know, we don't know. Maybe we don't know, let the family do it like they've always done it, the blood avengers.
I think that I'm curious, though, the Talmud must have a ton of commentary and argument about this.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's time to go. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
And it was always, I love discussing with you. It's always fun. And the Torah, every time you read it, you find something new in it. That's what's great.
Stay cool, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye.